In this episode of Your Story, we're going to explore what's inside your memoir, which events to use to bring out your message, and which details to include that are going to make it come to life. Last episode, I talked about the 3 questions to ask yourself before you started writing a memoir. One is, why are you writing the memoir? Second is, who is your audience? And third is, what message do you hope to share with your readers? With the answers to those 3 questions, you can go about making a list of events that are going to make your memoir relevant and interesting. When you hear the word scene, you're probably thinking of Hollywood, movies, television series, and such. And you're right, that's where the term comes from, but it still applies to the kind of writing we're wanting to do, memoirs, family history stories, and such. A scene is the smallest unit in the writing structure. I hope by using this term, it sets your mind to think visually. And that's definitely what you want when you're writing. You want to be able to have the reader see what you're thinking. I mean, see your memories. You're sharing your memories, and I'm sure you're in your memories, there's a visual that goes along with it, right? Okay, not crazy. I'm sorry. There's a visual that goes along with it, and you're wanting to share that with the reader. And the more successful that you are in sharing that vision, helping them see what you imagine, then the more enjoyable that story is going to be. A scene is an event that happens in a specific place, at a specific time, with specific people. For example, all of the people in my family gathered together at Thanksgiving at my sister's house. For the purpose of writing a memoir, what happened during that Thanksgiving is considered a scene. While I was writing The Milkman's Son, I used a Thanksgiving event in the memoir. I had all of my family that I'd grown up with in one place, and I was able to tell them about the new family in New Jersey that I had discovered. I was able to get their reactions, a lot of reactions all at once, sister, brother, mom, cousins, and most importantly, I was able to deliver the moment when I told my dad that DNA had revealed that he was not my biological father. These were all really crucial, especially the moment with my dad. That is the heart of this story in my mind, and it was super important to include. That was a great scene, and I got a lot of emotional use out of it. I got a lot of informational use, and it did wonders for moving forward my message of what is family, because that's the point where it comes into question. Am I still family with the family I grew up with? So that was a great launching point for my theme. It was a great scene. Why make a list of scenes? So you have all the parts of your story that are going to contribute to your message. And it also helps you decide what parts of the events that happen during the time frame of your story that don't apply and that should be left out. So you have a nice clean list. And then the second thing is, in my mind, that kind of the story's halfway written at that point. If I have all these lists, this thing happened, this thing happened, this thing happened, I can just structure them. And that's kind of the story. I have to fill in the details, no doubt about it. There's still a lot of actual writing to go in it, but a lot of times the hard part is deciding what's next. Okay, I've talked about this, and what's the next thing I should be including in my memoir? That can be very tough, even for veteran writers. For me, that's where I spend a lot of brain power, a lot of energy making those decisions of what to include next. And if you go ahead and make this list of scenes ahead of time, that's a lot of the work out of the way. And it's pretty easy to make a list. It's your memory. You start pulling those thoughts from your memory. Yeah, that applied, and you check them to the 3 questions: why you're writing it, who's your audience, and what's your message. And if they work, keep them. If they don't, toss them out. There's a couple of things to keep in mind when you're putting together that list, and one is the time frame of your story. Memoirs should not start with the day that you're born and end with the day you finish the manuscript and prepare it for publication. You have a major event that you're talking about and your reaction to it. So your time frame involves that major event, and then there should be a wrap-up point. And that wrap-up point should have to do with your what you learned from it, your decision. And obviously that you're going to have to pick that because there's no really clearly defined end point. But for me, I had made a second trip out to New Jersey, and I think it solidified a lot of things in my mind. So I was able to say, coming back from that trip, that was my end point. That was a space of 2 years from the time I took the DNA test and discovered my new family to the point where I came to a decision on how I was going to react to it. So 2 years. So you keep that time frame. You go look through that list of events that you've already done. Does it fit within that time frame? If it does, fine, keep it. If it doesn't, get rid of it. And why? Well, because there's a lot of things that happen. Even in the 2 years that I'm talking about, that's a limited amount of time. There's still a lot of things that happened to me that didn't have anything to do with my discovery of my family in New Jersey. So instead of me writing a memoir that was 1,000 pages long, I had a very appropriately length story that readers weren't going to fall asleep because I was including every detail. So yeah, have a time frame. Keep your events that you're going to write about within that time frame. The next thing to consider when you're when you're picking out the scenes that you're going to be using is to stay within your theme. Like I previously mentioned, 2 years happened. That's my time frame. And lots of things happened. And most of them had nothing to do with it. So don't include those unless they are helping you with the 3 questions you've asked yourself, which is, why am I writing this story? What is my message? And who's my audience? If it didn't apply, I just didn't include those parts. And because this isn't a history book or an encyclopedia, it's a story about something that has happened to you and how you react to it and what you've learned about it and the message you want to share. That's what a memoir should be about. That's what successful memoirs do. And that's what you'll want in a memoir that people will read. So for The Milkman's Son, I kept it to scenes that involved reaction or discovery or something to do with the fact that I found out that my dad is not my biological father. So if it impacted that part of my life, I included scenes for that. And I didn't include all of them. Some of them were kind of repetitive. It was kind of the same thing, different day. And we don't really need that. Maybe a couple times to show that it's a pattern. And beyond that, you can overdo a reaction to something. So you want to be careful with that. I tell you to only use events that fit within your theme. But the truth is there's exceptions. There's always exceptions. But I recommend that until you have a better grasp of the writing process, that you stick to events that only happen within that time frame that you've decided and within the theme that you've picked. Now, I'll give you an example. In The Milkman's Son, I wanted to show people how wonderful it is to do family history research. I love doing that. I think it's wonderful. I think people will benefit from learning about their ancestors and who they were and what they did. I think it's a great thing. So I decided to do a kind of a secondary storyline that involved that. It was more like a mystery. I'm looking for William the Immigrant Lindsay, and that becomes my quest. My secondary quest is part of it. And in some cases, it drives the main storyline, which is me discovering that my dad's not my biological father. In other cases, it's just me showing how cool that is. All right, so that's secondary. That is me writing outside of my theme. However, this second theme, which you can definitely write 2 themes in a story, fits nicely in with the main theme. I mean, it is the reason I discovered that my dad isn't my biological father. Subject-wise, it fits right in there. So, I mean, it definitely can be done, but like I said, I recommend that if this is your first memoir or family history story, wait. Do this on your second one. When you're more familiar with all of the other aspects of writing and those are coming more easily to you, then let's experiment with writing a second theme, a second part of the story to go with it. Because there's a lot of nuance that goes into writing a theme and a sub-theme together and getting them so that they work and they're cohesive. The scenes that belong in your story fall into 3 categories: the beginning, the middle, and the end. All right, you probably have heard that before. And all stories have that sort of a structure. And if you think about it this way, I think it will make it more easy for you to decide which scenes are appropriate or be thinking about events that happen and decide that you want to use them. So in the beginning, we put in all the information that the reader's going to need for the rest of the story to make sense. And I'm going to go into more of this. I'm going to go into this more in a later video, in the next video, in fact. But basically, that is, where does a story take place? When does a story take place? Who are the people involved in the story? What happens? And usually that can be an event that kind of starts the ball rolling. And in The Milkman's Son, that event is me taking a DNA test and discovering that my dad's not my biological father. So that's the what of the main what of my story. And there can be other what's involved with it. And there's also a what of kind of what you decide to do. So you have a discovery, and what do you decide to do? That all of those things go, and then the final one is why. Why do you decide to do whatever it is that you decide you're going to do when you discover whatever it is that happened? So those things all go in there. They set up the story, and if you think about it that way, I think it'll make it a lot easier for you to decide, oh yeah, this is going to describe who. And this is, and there's a lot of people involved. It wasn't just me. I have scenes that introduced my mom, my dad, my wife, a couple of my children, friends. I mean, all of these people play a role in my story. So I have to write scenes to explain the who for all of that. And of course, the second part is the middle. And the middle is where all the really fun stuff happens. This is where if you're watching a movie trailer, that's what you're seeing in a movie trailer, are all the fun bits. If it's a murder mystery, you're seeing people discover clues and maybe another body showing up. If it's an adventure, you're going to see scenes where people are jumping across, from cliff side to cliff side, or they're, trying to board a train, or there's a shootout, whatever it is. These are the things that go into the middle. So in a memoir, whatever that event is and whatever that theme is, you are going to want to include a lot of those scenes that are going to explore that part and your reaction to that part. And then, of course, the end wraps up everything that you brought up. If you've mentioned something somewhere in the story, make sure it's resolved at the end. That's what the end is for. And at the very, very end is your chance to deliver your message. Whatever you have learned, whatever wisdom you've gained from this life event, this is your opportunity to kind of wrap it all into a nice, neat little package and deliver it to the reader. That could be a sentence. It could be a paragraph. It could be a page. I don't recommend it going over a page because you want to keep it short and succinct. And that is it. So there you go. You're going to be able to take your scenes and see if they fit. And for me, knowing why a scene needs to be in a show, or I'm sorry, a story, makes it easier for me to select elements from my life that belong there because they're fitting into one of those 3 stages. That's it for this time. Go ahead and work on making that list. And don't worry, you can do this. There are people out there waiting to hear your story.